just wow, and it's a big announcement too. So welcome, and the idea, it was very spontaneous of me for to come on, and I have been busy enough to say that I probably have several presentations on the top of mind that I could easily give. But one of the thing about healthy nutrition for everyone is it's what you believe it to be that is going to kind of lead you down the path of what you're going to eat or not eat. And there's a variety of things out there. I'm going to point out a couple of things as we get into the supplement portion of it, because supplements are something that fill health food stores for the most part, many shelves, and probably make billions of dollars. And I know just omegas generally make, apparently, the last time I looked, it was the top supplement as far as dollar values go. And in many respects, these supplements are just supplements. And so that's why I kind of wanted to come on tonight, because I thought it would be interesting just to explain my view on it, and having been in food processing as well for 20 years, give you a little bit of a view of the quality of food that we have out there. And then vitamin D, and then whatever questions kind of come about. I could probably talk for several hours on the very topic, but if we could just streamline into that and then get into answering specific questions for you. So then that way you get your questions answered, and hopefully we'll get, wrap up this in an hour. And if it's a little bit over, no big deal, but then just try to come on every couple of weeks, just focusing in on nature and how we actually can be healthy that way. And not just nature, the forest and stuff, but just how our body functions and operates, and the limited science that is out there. But for some reason, everybody just needs knows that here's the magic bullet, and it's in quite often in supplementation. So I want to go through as much as I can tonight, just try to lay it out so then it's easy to understand, easy to execute, and you feel that you can take a deep breath and just be more relaxed with the abundance of information that exists out there. And there is a lot. I know they kind of say information age, and that might come in because we have technology, but information age, we get information not only from books and magazines and articles and stuff like that, but also from people, people who are actually even not practitioners, because they're reading and hearing and trying different things as well. So let's just agree that there is a lot of information out there. And when I kind of thought about this presentation, I thought, well, I'm going to frame it just to kind of put nutrition in its place and start from what I feel is probably the most important part, which is the mind, our thoughts, and how we think, and how that is vibrational, it's energy, and that will actually come forth into changing our chemistry or putting tension in the body, which then actually interferes, both of them will interfere with, let's say, digestion or circulation. So stress comes into play, mostly comes from the mind, and that's how the mind body is connected that way. Then we can get into another, a key component of health is actually sleep. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but sleep is of extreme value. And when I've done some research, and I know I put it in my book, the idea was if you are lacking sleep, then you could go insane. So there is a lack of stability in your awareness and so forth. But insane is one of the words they use, and therefore just go crazy, drive yourself crazy, and just can't stand it any longer. So sleep is of such value that they have, as part of a torture, just to kind of give you the breadth of it, is they will use it in torture where they can keep them awake they'll just beg for sleep. Eating not an issue, water not an issue, but that's one of the ones you use. So sleep is very, very important. And I usually just as far as people kind of balance to their day is there's truth to go to bed early and rise early. So there's, that healthy, wealthy, wise piece there. But if you go to bed at midnight, then there is, there's differences in how the body responds, but that would be different than if you go to bed at 2 in the morning and the things that you do prior to going to sleep as well. But ideally, it's about between 9:30 and 10:30. You can play with it, and you can, uh, if you go to bed very late, then you're obviously trying to make adjustments over time. But sleep is very, very, very important, especially when there's a lot of stress or tension or things that are coming at us. It's very important to get the sleep, and that gives the body the rest it needs. The other component, which is also very important, is movement. So whether that's, some people have all like exercise, physical movements, and to balance out our days, yes, we don't want to be sitting still or lying still. It's getting up and moving, and that could even just be putting out the garbage, or as I like to say, organizing or cleaning the house, or if you're looking after children, or if you're cooking food. That's movement. And that really in our day, if we can make sure that we're up and moving around or getting up every hour, then that's going to be important to that. But there's other aspects to movement. I want to just say, if you are sitting or if you're in certain positions for the time you are, then you can actually kind of move in the chair. Or if you're looking at a lot of screen time, be it if we look at our whole body movement, is to take our eyes away from the screen time and focus on something else in the distance. And what I want to kind of bring both sleep and movement is we can overuse or exhaust. Both of these words might kind of fit in different places here. But if we don't go to sleep or we get less sleep, we feel exhausted. If we stare at a screen, we can exhaust our eyes, which is why people feel they can't do anymore. Their eyes are tired. They're starting to see double, or it's blurry. And this is, as I move into nutrition, is something we can also exhaust, is something that comes into nutrition too as well, especially in the digestive system. If we eat too much, we can exhaust our enzymes or our stomach acid. And we can also exhaust our energy if we eat so much food, a large meal. Then that's where, when people go, I feel tired, they just got to sit down on the couch and actually just lie there because they don't have the energy. They are tired from eating too much. So that's important to understand. That word exhaustion comes into play. And if you work out too much or too hard, that can exhaust you. If you have too much stress, that's exhausting. And stress comes in all the many ways that it does, but it can be exhausting just talking to somebody who's taking up your energy. Or in this case, in this event, just to bring in this event, there's a lot of things that can then how can I say it, push buttons, make us feel sad, angry, all these various emotions that are, if we had to draw a line, then they're going to be emotions that use up our vital energy in some, and the length of time will be faster. So we're seeing how that would play, which is why we're telling people who are in fear that uses up their energy, is to stop watching television. You just stop watching the news and just have a relaxing time or evening, or play, or be creative. And some of those things are important to step away or not have as much exposure if you are finding that collectively you have so many things coming in at the same time. The balance is to kind of spread everything out, spread things out, and don't be too hard on yourself as far as you've got to do all of this anymore during this interesting event and these times. Is sometimes that's very, very helpful more than ever, is to spread it all out instead of doing so many things in one day. just pick and choose. And just remember the Caribbean, or I remember Mexico as well. They take 5 times longer to do everything, and they have siestas, and they take the time to relax. And we do have summer coming up, and it's a good time to just relax and enjoy the nice weather. You're in the mood to do it, and mood changes when we have all this light, and this is an important other balance thing as well. So I'm going to jump into some nutrition things here and focus on first and explain a couple of things. I'm going to explain to you a 5-finger philosophy that's been very, very helpful to understand if we have a spectrum from unhealthy eating to healthy eating, that this is something to work towards. Part of this is understanding the pieces as I say it. So what's the 5-finger philosophy? It's fresh food, it's some raw food, it's whole food, and then you have naturally grown food. Some will say organic, even though there's some things about organic that don't, certified organic, that don't make it ideal. They can use a lot of uh, chemicals, whereas some may not. So we have this interesting, every piece, every part of that can be explained further. But first I want to go into food quality, because this will back us right into why that 5-finger philosophy. Now, the 5th one is supplements from the same. And I'll go into a little bit more of that specifically around vitamin D. So you have a better understanding, and it'll make sense for other vitamins and even minerals and nutrients that we buy in a bottle, a can, a jar, something like that. So let's go into quality. Now, as a person who worked in food processing for 20 years, I was exposed, because I worked for one of the large grocery retailers and food processors in Canada, but in corporate. But because I did the purchasing and related to the commodities, I got to see the processing, sugar refinery, oil refinery, and what other ones we have? Cocoa, understand coffee, and the bread making and the chocolate making and dairy and many things that they had their hands in, this company. And what I can tell you is, this will make it more sense to, instead of going specifically into foods, is when we moved from small grocery stores or local farms and all of that, one of the things that was important for our health was to have shelf stability, and to have the foods not go rotten. And as time, the commercialization of the foods came into play, they were thinking of those things as well. Not so much the toxicity and chemicals that come in with preserving the foods and packaging the foods and making sure they don't go moldy before their time, or even soft in the way of crackers or bread. It's got sugar and vegetable oil in it, when typically it could be just flour and water, like in sourdough bread. So rightfully so, the food manufacturers out there and the big and bigger and bigger commercialization of our food got us to the place where we are. We're highly packaged processed food. The idea is that also came about with that is convenience. And convenience was not just the grocery stores thinking about convenience. Of course, they marketed as such, because people just got busier and busier and away from balance and away from family, and were working, 9 to 5, and then add on a couple of hours for getting ready and transporting, and in some cases the whole entire morning. And then by the time they got home, so we moved into a lifestyle that in most cases, through HR and conversations with them, they're not entirely happy. It's not what we call the balanced lifestyle, but people have to work with where they are at the moment and make little changes or little steps. And we're going to go through some of those too as well. But I wanted you to get a good sense of why we are where we are with the quality of the food that is in both the health food store and the grocery store there as well. So some examples are definitely the cereals, the pasteurized milk and dairy, homogenized, the um, sauces, they will have preservatives, the meats, and they can't sell meats, sausages and so forth with some form of preservative in there, be it they'll call it natural, and but it'll be some form, if not like salts and stuff like that. So they also have rules and regulations. Another added step here is, in order to protect the consumer, a lot of these commercialized manufacturers, food processors, actually have rules and regulations that they have to abide by. In the meat, they have what was he? He was I think investigator, but he came in quite often when I did work in the office at a meat plant very earlier on, and they came in and always was there to see, and the company had to pay for him to come in. So he would come in and do the job and make sure that they aren't going to get in trouble. And of course, health and safety, right? Health. They don't want anybody getting poisoned or sick, and that's on them. So we had these people come in, and the company had to pay, and they were gladly paying that. So there's all of this that comes into play with why we are today. And the quality comes into play in the wide range. When we think of it, you could grow your own, and it would matter on the seeds that you use, on the quality of the food, to the water that you use, to the soil that you use, to how you feed the plants and things like that. But in essence, it is an enjoyable thing to do, but sometimes not as practical. But it's great to get kids involved, great for people to get involved outside in nature. So one of the things about balance, upcoming too as well, inspectors, that's it, Jack. So one of the things that's potentially coming more and more into the future, not to put a dark cloud on it, is I've already seen a little bit of the writing on the wall, is possible food shortages, where you go in and certain things didn't delivery, certain things with the farmer, and again, even we saw it with lumber, and right now it's double, a lot of the prices on house and stuff like that. So we may have a number of these things happen going into the food, and I want to describe a few things that are going to be very helpful here. And one of the things that I did here in Toronto, when I think of the five-finger philosophy, whole and fresh and raw, and then growing naturally, is the many, many, many weeds, although they're not weeds, they're plants that grow in and around areas, parks, ravines, trails, your own lawn, your garden, your apartment. They're everywhere. So I've just spent the last 3 weeks exploring that. So there's a lot of wild food here in Toronto, but it's abundant here. And microchip shortages will impact farmers and the food supply. Yet there's going to be a lot of different pieces here that may come into play for some or not some. The thing I also, so wild food, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of wild food that, and I was just blown away on how abundant these are. And one of the things is there's some therapeutic part to it as well. And one of them is called Plantain. Now, an Irish person who has a healing garden, an herb garden, it's called Plantain. Now, it's not plantain as in the banana-like plantain, but it grows lower to the ground. I'm going to spell it out here. And plantain, plant and then ain. So plantain, if you look it up, and I'll give you a little bit of homework on these three specific plants. Plantain is, here's what I'm going to say. no matter where you are, city or country, you're most likely going to be able to find these they grow wonderfully along roads, just right at the edge where the road may come, or the sand or the gravel, and they grow there. And if you ever have an injury, be it as significant as a rusty nail, but any open wounds, even if you have infection in your ear, even if you have it in your eye, this plantain, if you chew it, you can just chew it and eat. It's kind of nutty. It's really interesting. And the good leaves you want to eat. But the plantain in itself is the one plant that this herb person said she'd have in her garden. She could only have one plant, that's it. So it's really healing for the respiratory. So during this event, when we're hearing about respiratory, it's very involved in a lot of things, as we've heard in the past, bronchitis and pneumonia and many, I think it's a few respiratory conditions are in the top 10. So plantain is something that can be edible as in greens. So just in a salad, you can just pinch off a few leaves while you're walking. And at the same time, you could chew it up, and you could actually place it on the wound, especially if you're in very stuck, or you know what you're doing. Explore this plantain. Now, if this plantain flowers, which it's not now, but it'll come up with a nice strong stalk, and it looks very, I mean, I probably could have picked one from just the sidewalk there and brought it in, but it is, it's kind of got like an oval egg broadleaf scenario, and all you'd have to do is just place it on any wound, and it'll help draw out the toxins, draw out the impurities. So one amazing plant to share and share and share. So just, not just for you guys, but one of the plants I want to bring forth at this time that is going to be extremely helpful and so abundant. And we can't eat it all up. It just, I think, just one ravine alone, here I am. I swear there's thousands of them. I can look in one area and see probably like 60 just standing in that one spot. So that's plantain. Jot down that name. The second one that grows very abundant, it's called lamb's quarters. Lamb's quarters. And when you see this plant, you're going to go, I think I picked this out 100 times in my garden. I do not think they can get rid of this one either. Let nature run its course here, which is great. This other name for lamb's quarters is actually wild spinach. It's beautiful in a sense. You can use it just anything like you're using spinach. You can put it in smoothies. You can just pick it off and eat it. It's very nice and mild that way. Or you can stir fry it, or put anywhere as how you use spinach. You can use this, and it'll grow up in the sun. It'll possibly grow anywhere from a few feet, a few feet. So you can see all the baby ones. The distinguishing, I'm going to put the name down here. The distinguishing thing about, as you go and explore it, is lamb's quarters actually looks like it's somewhat a whitish on the newer leaves. And basically it's like if you were to put water on it, it would just come right off. And it's actually not gritty, but it's almost like beads that grow on it. So you're going to see it once you look it up. So just Google, there's different videos that show how to identify it. And it's really, really easy to identify and very abundant. I think, just to give you an idea, I have a couple of planters in the front, and I haven't touched them since last fall when I took out the vines and the spiky plant in there. So nothing. It kind of is under an overhang as well with the porch. And they would dry out quick because they're planters, like concrete planters. And lo and behold, as I'm learning about a few plants here I can share, it had about 6 of these lamb's quarters just growing, not watering, not much sun, just growing. Both lamb's quarters and plantain will grow in the shade as well. So you'll see them both in sun and shade forest. They do very well in both environments. They're very, very hardy. The other one I want to bring out here, which is probably no surprise at all, is actually the dandelion. So the dandelion itself has many, many, many uses, but you can eat the flower. If it gets to seed now, just sprinkle those lovely things on the meadows and on the side and just blow it, and then we'll just have more food. The dandelion flower, you can just eat it as it is, or you can pick some of the nice cleaner leaves. And I have to tell you that not all dandelions look the same. You'll see once you start spying what a dandelion leaf looks like, especially all the other leaves, you'll see some of them are thinner. Some of them grow higher. They're not like our typical dandelion, but it's smaller dandelion flower, but you'll get familiar with them. But as soon as you see them in the spring, you can start to eat the leaves, start to chew on the leaves. Now, there's also the root as well, which you can harvest and easily make tea from. I'm just trying the simple ways instead of going into the tincture, dandelion wine, all of these things you can make. And some people can preserve, you can work into using hot water and jar, can, whatever, the dandelion flowers. They're very much like perfume in my opinion. They don't hold back on flavor, the dandelion flowers. So dandelion is very good for the liver. So let me just kind of backtrack a little bit as far as all of these three key plants that are in abundant in city and parks and on sides of lawns and alleyways, and they'll sometimes grow right out of the concrete. I have a little one of lamb's court, just goes right out of the bricks. It's all sand, but it's there about 3 inches high. I can still eat, I can still pick it and just eat it. But some of the things around plants is plants, when you eat them like that and forage and eat them, some of them, and when I say wild, that is fresh. Okay, so local fresh, that's a good thing. And then you can bring some home as well, but take off of a leaf or so and just chew on it. Between all the different things that they probably don't know is in there, but a combination of minerals and phytochemicals. But one of the things I understood about wild foods is they have a stronger essence, a stronger immunity to, and I don't want to kind of use the survival because we think, okay, that's, survival of the fittest, but that's how they become food. They do it for us to be, they're strong in their makeup so that they can help the liver, help to nourish the different nutrients that are in there, and maybe the ones they don't even know, and the energy. So when you're foraging like that and eating a few leaves, the vibration of foods will actually considerably continue to fade. Not to say that they're not there entirely even when you cook it, but they will continue to fade. So to actually pinch off a few of these wild plants, these beautiful plants, would be very, very helpful. And so I really wanted to bring that up tonight, because that's kind of the balance that to come forth as we think about possible food shortages in this or that. And you actually want something to be helpful in when we have the nutrient value, to go back into nutrition. When we have the nutrients in our body, we're not as hungry. So besides water, water is one of those things that will thirst our hunger. So we can always think of water and good water and fresh water and hydrating. But also these raw plants, these plants are abundant in water. Most plants, be it celery and a lot of the plants, are so water rich, they're up in the 90s. They're up in the 90s. Unlike peanut butter, to give you the very opposite side of things, is there's hardly any water in peanuts, which is why if you've ever been tested in school, just chew, like a cracker's very dry as well, but peanut butter, and it gets stuck in your throat. So that's quite the opposite. But a lot of the wild plants, you start to incorporate it, is also wood. be quench your thirst as well, if you're thirsty. So this is just some very fundamentals. Other things, again, if you get into it a little bit, some of the things like raspberry leaves, you can make just different teas. But there's an abundance of plants, even thistle, just to mention thistle, which we don't want to touch, but the big thistles that do exist, you can take off the fuzzy, spiky leaf part, and the rib part of this thistle will be just like you just eat it like you eat celery. And so it's just a food. But I wanted to at least mention those three. There are plenty of kinds, but those ones are highly in abundant. And as dandelion and these other one, lamb's quarters and plantain, they're around all year. So you can have access to them all year. And then of course there's the usual apple trees and different things like that in farmers market. So that's about as fresh, raw, and whole as local, if local is fresh, but at the end of the day, that you're going to get into, and it's there for us to use and to know about. So I wanted to bring in that. Now, when it comes to eating habits, okay, I'm just going to skip into eating habits here. This is a place where if we have to kind of balance out, we take the opportunity to look at our eating habits and apply. I'm going to give a couple of things here, but because we have to think of a couple of things here is how much are you eating? I got this no snack movement, and that in the case of, if we're talking about food shortages potentially, or less food, or not all the food you're used to, then actually getting down to 2 meals a day, or 3 light meals or 3 meals versus 5 meals a day. I've been thinking about that strongly in the last few years, thinking that's not very helpful for people who are diabetic when they constantly put food that breaks down to sugars for the most part, and then they've got to take insulin to bring down their blood sugar. So that's more medication. So the idea would be to even some days, just try to eat 2 meals, 3 meals, or try to eliminate the snacks at first. Even for children, children do not need snacks. If you want to calm your children down, or grandchildren, children at all, then the idea is not to give them food, because food is energy. And so they're like, they're all so active, and you think, I'm just going to keep them busy, I'm going to give them some food. But you give them some food and they want to be active, and they got to run it off. So we're the same way. We just have better understanding and control of it. So the idea with, as far as quantity of food, is to get down to healthier foods. You'll be less hungry for sure. And to have 3, you want to give your body a break between meals. Call it a little micro fasting, but you want to be able to have the body digest all the various stages before you put more food in. It's just very helpful. It'll finish its cleaning and finish its digesting and processing and elimination and all of that, and give it a rest instead of eating constantly, which some people do. But this was just a bit of a training. So that's why I mentioned just planting the seed and things to think about as we move forward. It is healthy anyway. The farmers used to do that. They go out and work for a few hours, then come in and eat a good breakfast and be out for the rest of the day, come in and have a good dinner. And that was it. That was it. So they managed to do that quite well. And you feel a bit lighter when you're working, as opposed to when you keep putting food in there. So some other thing about eating habits is the space, is the actual eating experience. So I just want to mention that here, a lot of people are used to eating on the run. They need to eat quickly. And this is about giving yourself the time to have a sit down, to relax the body. When you do that, using probably breath, just be conscious, mindful, that kind of thing. Leave everything, if you've got a dining room door, or you've got a door frame or whatever, come to the table. You leave all the history, past thinking, all that. Just clear the mind. Do some breathing, some breathing where you just feel calmer, shoulders drop, and you're relaxed, because this is really going to be helpful for you digesting your food and your body communicating to you when you're full, when you've had enough. The other key thing about this eating experience, there's a couple more things I want to mention. One is chewing. One is chewing. So you want to drink your food, right? So you chew enough so you feel like you're drinking your food. That'll be really helpful on processing the food. And the other thing, if you're consuming smoothies, let's say, I often have a very large smoothie for lunch, and I've been picking these wild herbs and using them, plants, and you have to chew that as well. So this is essentially liquid food, which really, if we think about the past, we didn't do so much of it. So whether that's a protein shake or it's a whole food smoothie, something of that nature, the carbs that, the sugars, carbs that are in those foods, which there usually is it's helpful if you chew, you chew your liquid. So drink your food, chew your liquid, and that's another important thing about your eating experience. The next one, and I'll just leave it this one, is actually, instead of, you've got all of that and you're chewing, is to actually realize that there's so much to the experience of the plate, the color, the senses, the taste of it, that when you chew your food more and you think about the colors and you think about, oh, where does this come from? Just kind of have some, conversation if you're with other people, or if you're not, just contemplate different things and think about things around that. The thing about chewing and that, tasting, is that most foods, this is unlike gum and some candy, where the flavor just disappears. Okay, you're ready to throw it out. The food that in nature, natural food, those foods, let's say I'm going to use what would I use? A date, for instance, or a date square. When you put in a quarter of the date square here, there is, I'll just mute Eric there. There is to understand that the flavor is still going to be there. So the chewing experience is just to remind yourself that the flavor, so most people like their sweets and it's just, just want to get more of that flavor. But as you're chewing it, whether it takes 20 or 30 times along, you're going to have the same flavor in there. So in order to quench your sweet tooth, you don't, just a couple mouthfuls, but making sure that you chew it well. Now, primarily, some of the sweet foods, they've been cooked enough, so they're easy to chew. But if you go towards some fruit and stuff like that, they're not. You'll get a better sense of what I mean with flavor and how long it would take to chew just a part, just one bite of an apple or fruit. So I wanted to bring that up, the eating experience as well, when we're thinking about the meals that you have, that part of the nutrition part and health. Now I'm going to go into, if any questions ever, you can always just put them in there, just plant them in. If you have the chat, which if you scroll down to the bottom, you can easily do it, but I'm going to open it up for questions. Let me go into vitamin D. And vitamin D is one of those things. It is not a vitamin, first of all. It is a non-steroidal hormone, and it nutrient, let's just say. It is global in the body for the reasons it is, because it's a big part of our communication. Now, the thing about, so that's kind of knowing what that nutrient is. That is known as the sunshine vitamin, let's say, or nutrient. And I want to quickly explain a couple things about how we've gone offside with producing our own vitamin D that I think is very, very important, just so that you know to tell others or share. And that is how we bathe. So vitamin D is produced by the UVB rays, the rays that are coming from the sun, UVB, and cholesterol in the body. So this oil, or this, this part of our skin, if it takes about 2 days to produce the vitamin D, when we go ahead and we wash constantly with soap, and some people will wash, they're at the gym, they come there later, there is this um, there is this potential. And again, soaps and shampoos and all of those things, it's making money, it's a business. So quite often you can realize that you don't really need to wash your skin with harsh soaps as much as you think. And you could just use a face cloth and gentle warm water, not very hot water, and you got your private parts, right? So you feel like this and that. But at the end of the day, it's something to understand because it interferes with the sun and making vitamin D. And if anybody's on cholesterol meds, that also could interfere with the vitamin D. And one thing about sunbathing, let's say, it's kind of, sunbathing is very interesting because you really only need 5 or 10 minutes at a go. So but the idea is, if you've just taken a shower, or you take a shower after you've been lying out in the sun because you get warm, and you're using a bunch of soap, you're actually removing the benefits of producing vitamin D. So I feel strongly that between medications and the bathing or the hygiene, that we are hindering the process of the vitamin D more and more all the time by staying out of the sun when we need little bits of sun for sure. And yes, they do say about the darker skin as well, right? So the different shades. But I think the darker skin has a much healthier way of being in the sun for that reason. So they can tend to produce a lot of it. Now, what I understand is for the little bits, coming in out of the sun, let's say you're walking the forest, you're walking on the trails, that is plenty. You go for an hour walk and you're coming in the sun just like it used to be when this planet was full of forest and trees. You come in and out, you go down by the water, you're sitting on the rock, you're just taking in some sun rays as you're resting, having lunch, get on your way. And this used to be more of a routine. And I just want to kind of put it out there that if we're really trying to adopt more of a healthier, balanced way of being, that coming in and out. It's not that the sun is any stronger. It is stronger from the standpoint is we get too much direct sun and sun that's bouncing off of metals and concrete and reflective sunlight, and it's very strong. And some people, the sunbathing is not, it's not natural for the skin to be able to do that so much. But I hope that's helpful there. That's the production of your own vitamin D, is those two factors to consider, the cholesterol and the bathing part of it, and also the timing of coming in and out of the sun. And we store a lot of vitamin D, and we make a lot of vitamin D just with that. So there's just that, we're inside 9 to 5, and quite often you don't get the rays as you need. And there's this big push to have supplements, but I'll explain a little bit about supplements here. Most of the supplements are like the food quality I was talking about on the shelf to make it shelf stable. The natural vitamin D, and I'm just going to explain this to you, comes from sheep's wool. It's sheep's wool, lanolin. It's a reverse process. They take the oils from the sheep wools, and that's the majority of the vitamin D in the world. The thing is there's really a couple different ways to process it. One is a cheap, quick, that kind of process, which is the majority of them in the world. So it's like oxidized, like fish oil, when you treat it that way. And there's more vitamin D too. And there's another process, takes a little bit longer, more involved, and that will produce more of the D3. The D3. Now, I'm talking about oil from the sheep's wool. So if you are going to consume vitamin D supplementation, you want to move from the little tablets that you're taking and the emulsion that they create, which is more like a creamy or white kind of substance, and to an oil. So you want to make sure you have an oil. The effectiveness and efficiency of the capsule, the tablets or the emulsions, you may be getting very little, extremely little. You don't even realize it. And so the one I take is it's an oil, but it's in an oil matrix as well. It's with an omega-3. It's seal oil, and it's raw, and it comes from the Inuit, and it's very simple. And vitamin D can absorb under the tongue because it's the mammalian molecules. So the idea, though, is to make sure that you are on some form of oil of vitamin D, regardless of the process that they use. That is the healthiest form. And so if you're taking 6,000, 8,000, you're going to get at least half of that in the efficient. You won't be wasting your money. Because the other one is highly processed. It's the difference between freshly squeezed orange juice and Tang instant orange juice, where you've got the crystals and you just reconstitute it with water. It's like that. There'll be night and day as far as the quality of it. So I wanted to talk to that vitamin D. I don't know if anybody has any questions about vitamin D. The idea of how much will absolutely be determined on how your body is processing, if you're getting any sunshine or light that way, or how the supplement is performing for you. And that's that. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Vitamin D is absolutely critical for the body. You do not want to be low in vitamin D. It definitely helps with immune strength, all over body strength. Never mind your immune system. It helps with a brain function and nerves, communication within your body. It's like this. The omegas are more global. The thing about vitamin D versus omegas, which I can easily talk about, is that omegas are the fats, they're the essential fats, 3 and 6, and they are macronutrient along with protein and carbs. And when we say macro, it just means your body uses more of it. It's like you just need more of it. Whereas the micro, you don't need as much of it, but any nutrient deficiency, even protein, is going to be, as they say, you're going to only be as strong as your weakest link, as everything kind of works together, even vitamin D, vitamin A, the omegas, vitamin D, vitamin A. There's a lot of synergies and working together. Same with the B vitamins. They're very synergetic, the whole gamut of B vitamins, or the essential proteins, let's say. Sugar and carbs are a little different. They can convert and roll and dive and break down and use each other, but fats are completely different from protein. So I'm happy to answer any questions top of mind that you have about. It could be anything, actually. It could be stress management, or it could be the mind body connection, or it could be any particular nutrient or vitamin D. Any questions there, or any healthy habits, nutrition. And we can use that. If you want to unmute yourself, then we can even just have a chat. Other things might come to mind. Eric, you have any questions? Shelly Ann?
So much information, so much great information that you just shared. I especially like the part that you shared about the herbs. I'm from Jamaica, and so you know, for us, that's how like my grandmother cured any sickness. She was able to go into the farm and pick certain, herbs or wild bush and make a tea based on whatever the health, whatever, concerns you had. And that would help it. Like, very rare do we ever go to a doctor. So, I love what you're saying about that. And I'm also a holistic nutritionist. So for me, one of the parts that I truly enjoyed was the herbal, the study of herbal remedy. That for me was fascinating. And then you're reminding me about it and get me excited. Like I should continue to study more into that. I do take dandelion now. I buy it from Whole Foods, but I see it on when I go on my walks, and I'm like, and did any dog pee on it? I'm like tempted to pick it, bring my Ziploc bag and pick it and put it in there. And I may do that. But the plantain, I heard of the plantain. I have studied the plantain, but I forgot what it looked like. So I'm gonna go online and get a picture of it so that next time I see it, I can get some of it, you know, and try it. So it's amazing for that. One of the things I've been experimenting with is cycle syncing. I don't know if you heard of cycle syncing.
No.
Okay, so cycle syncing is where, based on your menstrual cycle, it's broken down into 3 phases. And so I've been experimenting with different herbs during different phase. And so, especially in my luteal phase, which is a stage before my actual period. So I'm in that stage right now, which I find is the most challenging because there's such a shift in hormone that one of the reasons I'm doing it is just to ease the symptoms and ease the effects of it, you know, so I don't have this like this sharp turn in each phase, you know. And so I find, you know, as you're talking about the herbs, you know, I need to look further into seeing what else is out there to use.
Yes, I recall studying that. I studied with a Dr. Guinaud from France, and there's a couple things around. I mean, men have hormones. They typically have a 24-hour cycle, and so they have their there's the moons, and then there's primrose. You know, some of the things that would come up is primrose and borage oil and all these different oils. But if I've learned anything from my studies and just being able to step back and be very real, is quite often, and no matter where we are in the world, there's the plant for that. You know, it doesn't have to come from South America. It doesn't have to come from Asia. The plants that we have been, you know, it's just that for some reason, you know, they decide, you know, they want to make a business of it, whatever it is, and there's have all these benefits. But I've seen across the board that much of, you know, they'll say, okay, here's the top foods for this, but there's so many other foods that we can easily grow or access through wild herbs, and it's free and natural, rather than having to do the certain formulas they come up with. I mean, it's just there. It exists. We don't have to just focus on that one superfood that you get from Peru. And it's a certain berry, and it's this freeze dried, and you're buying that package all the time. And vitamin C is abundant in so many foods.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, no good.
Cheryl,
Yes,
Yeah.
Eric.
there's one really great wild plant that I used to love picking when I was up in Ottawa and go up to Algonquin Park and right along the roadways of the Trans-Canada in the wet spring, fiddleheads. If you
Yes.
were lucky enough to run onto a fiddlehead patch. And at first you didn't quite understand them. The first time I did it, I thought, oh, this is nuts. But when you fried them in pure butter, it's the most delicious food going,
It,
you know?
it is. And that's a point that you just make there, Eric, is cooking. How you cook the fiddleheads is extremely important. You can't eat them raw, and they have to be cooked very, very well.
Well, it's the same thing with shrimp. You know, when I serve guest shrimp dinners, most people don't realize, look, I want you at the dining room table. I will bring the plate to you really quickly. This is going to take me like less than 2 minutes to cook. And if I cook it more than 2 minutes, it's going to be like shoe leather. And then I stop buying, you know, Loblaws $6 packages of shrimp, thinking, oh, I'm so cool. I saved all this money. No, no. I go for the $18 Argentinian raw, and I cook it in coconut oil, 100% organic, beautiful, or butter, one or the other, depends how I'm feeling. And of course, squeeze it with organic lemon. So my wife has taught me a lot since I joined her. So when I came to Toronto, I thought I was the coolest looking dude, you know, from Ottawa, and I thought I looked great. So I weighed 125 pounds. She said, Did you realize, Eric, your ribs are sticking out of your chest? I didn't know. So now I weigh a whopping 150 pounds, 146 to 151. And that's my ideal weight. I like to pretend I'm 6 feet tall. In actuality, I'm a disappointing 5'8". But I put on, higher heels. For a man, it's important to be 6 feet, right? It's the macho thing. The most important thing, here's what happened in my life. I came from Europe with my parents when I was 6, and my first junk food and garbage food like pizza, hot dogs, hamburgers, and even pasta, that came only after I got married at the age of about 22. I never used to have that food. My mother made all this stuff out of the garden. Everything that was cooked in our house in those days was organic anyway. In those days, there was no toxins in the food. So I had a really great base for being healthy. And then when I got married and started eating all this typical packaged junk food and continued it and buying TV dinners, not thinking, oh, this is all so cool. It was only till I got back to, with Corey doing cooking from scratch. We try to buy the least packaged food going. We try to do everything organic. And it makes such a difference, not only in the taste, but in how your body reacts. It's just amazing. And people don't realize this. It's not really that difficult to cook. I didn't know how to cook back in 1980, but I learned really quick for specific reasons like a divorce. And so now it's sort of like people say, well, why did you start a restaurant, Eric? Well, because I'm not crazy. Do you think I want to work 24 hours a day? I'm too old for that. But people don't realize if they just take care with food and with supplements, don't go cheap. I mean, most of the pills don't even get ingested in your body. Like it's ridiculous buying, cheap supplements. Go expensive or don't bother because you're wasting your money. I
Yeah,
think you might know about that, Cheryl. So,
yeah.
uh,
The
yeah,
simple thing on that, Eric, just to kind of expand for even Shelly Ann, is many of the discoveries of the vitamins were done by, let's say, pharmaceutical companies.
yeah,
And many of the pharmaceutical companies, like vitamin A being the first one, and then, E came and stuff. And so they would synthetically start to produce them. They're not real, of course. I mean, they're not healthy, but they knew that, and still today it happens, right? So you have these, let's say, enriched foods. You know how they say these foods, well, they're enriched with B vitamins, they're enriched with this, and they're those cheap forms that come through the pharmaceutical company. It's like an arm, nutraceuticals they'll call it, and they less so now, but I can't tell you how much less. Do we actually have certain small companies or companies that are really for quality? But now I think it's close to 12 years now working with the omegas and doing a number of presentations on it, is the fact that fish oil, and I just kind of put two and two together, having been in food processing, we had fishery farms, is that fish oil is a waste byproduct of the fishing industry.
hmm,
And so they most of it's farmed, from the farm fish that's, it's eating grains, and they'll put crazy things in their feed, and they're in the cages, and there's so many of them, and it's just an unhealthy environment and not their food. So that's where the oils tend to hold the toxicity. I mean, the same with humans, stores in the toxins, right? So you have that going on with the fish oils, but it's definitely a popular supplement. So I mean, I'd always recommend, if people aren't vegan per se, that they try the seal oil. I've had many people go from fish or a better quality of fish, and they've done it themselves, to krill, and there's just different ones that have made the headlines. And then try a raw seal oil as opposed to a processed oil, because most of them are refined, bleached, and deodorized. But yeah, no, Eric, quite often you can't tell how things are made by looking at the label. It'd be nice to say, okay, learn to read labels. It'll take you only so far, but
Yeah.
there's the questions, lots of questions. Like they use just a very quick example of Parmesan cheese, and in there is what they put in cellulose. And what they don't tell you, they put the cellulose in there so the cheese doesn't stick. But that is sawdust at the end of the day.
Really?
Yeah, it's so.
You know what I've done for the past month, or maybe even close to 6 weeks now? I've been drinking kefir, and now I'm doing it in the morning and in the late afternoon, about a half an 8-ounce glass with a complete tablespoon of powdered greens, green mixture. The top, I forget the branding. Corey buys it all, and I buy coconut organic kefir. So
Yeah.
since I've been doing that, my health has popped up 100% even better than it was. And my silver hair is now starting to go its natural color. I sort of like the silver, but now the kefir is turning it brown again. I'm thinking, oh my God, this stuff is a miracle. And all my energy is back because I went through an illness just recently, but we won't talk about that. But in these past 1 month, just the kefir alone, with the vitamin D and the zinc and some other stuff, and the B12, and but I've been taking this stuff for a while. But if you are willing to discover, do a lot of exploring, and find the right product, anybody can fix themselves without a doctor, just by what you ingest, and we, of course, we have to supplement, because even the organic vegetables and things we buy, we know they're not really, really organic. I mean, they're better than being non-organic, but they're not the vegetables my mother grew in her garden when I was 15, because the soil was different then, so was the air, and there wasn't nearly as much chemicals in those days. So yeah, it's very important.
So we have to detoxify, right? So that's the thing, kind of finding the balance, is that if we have more toxins and chemicals, our body has to get rid of them, right? Our body has to release them through all the various elimination channels. And in my book, the reason why I wrote the book, All Guts, All Glory, after several years contemplating what would I write about, I just don't want to write about all the to let you know what nutrients and vitamins and what they're for and how you take them. But in there, the key thing is the root causes of disease and the stages, which is just an increase of buildup of toxicity or congestion in the body. So we easily get to having the different symptoms based on just more congestion, right? And chronic inflammation and different things like that. So it's really simple. Part of what I prefer to do is explain and try to keep the simple truths, because that to me is going to save a lot of people time, energy, and the headache, and not having the results like that they believe they're going to have. So it's very interesting that we've continued, get into capitalism and big business and bigger business and more business and make money. And I get that that's where they're going with it. But we have a lot of, potential with our health, Eric, just to, the doctors don't take much nutrition. We've all learned that probably in time, right? They don't take much at all. So, and it's not been the paradigm for them to focus on that, because they're kept very busy with using the pharmaceuticals, not nutraceuticals, but pharmaceuticals. And certainly things have changed, and not all doctors are similar. They will whisper, they'll say, oh, maybe you want to do this. So it's good. But any other comments or questions? They're good, all good.
So question, quickly, I wanted to ask you if you knew anything about turpentine.
Turpentine. You mean the turpentine that we use in wood, in furnishings, and that kind of turpentine? Or is
No,
it
it's similar, but this one is the form that you can ingest.
okay?
Have you heard
I'm
of it?
It doesn't surprise me thinking the various different things. If it's this, then it's good, and if it's not, like organic calcium, inorganic calcium, apple cider vinegar, white vinegar, like there's these differences. Organic arsenic won't kill you at all. Inorganic arsenic will poison you. So it doesn't surprise me. But what have you heard of turpentine?
So there's a doctor, Dr. Jennifer Daniels, I believe her name is, and she talked about turpentine, and I did quite a bit of research on it, and there are quite a few people online who's been taking it for candida.
Mm.
And so after my research, I called my health practitioner who's out in Barrie, and I asked her some questions, and she said, yeah, she's given her daughter and she know about it, and she's used it. And I ordered some from her, started taking, and you know what? It does work.
Mm.
I had a problem with one of my toenail where I think I had a fungal infection. I've been putting it on it for over, and my toenail is back to normal.
Awesome.
And I've been taking it as well. And I find that my digestion is a lot better, but I take it, but I know I had a yeast problem, I had candida, and I've tried many detoxes and stuff, but it would come back. And since I've been taking the candida, I find that it's improved a lot. And so what I do, I take it, the turpentine, a little bit less than a teaspoon on sugar cubes, and I would chew it because the candida. So they eat the sugar, but they die from the turpentine. And so
Interesting.
yeah, so I find it help. I was taking L2 with if you do there's quite a bit of testimonial about it online and other people and stuff. And I can send you Dr. Danielle's link to her talk about that. And it's also, when I first took it, I tell you something, I had so much energy. She said that's one of the things you'll notice, your
Mm.
energy level and the clarity in your thinking and your brain, it will improve. And it's so true. And it did help me.
Awesome.
I was reading, what's his name? I'm going to tell you in just a minute if I can see the name real quick. Um, Anthony Williams, the liver rescue book I'm reading, and he was talking about apple cider vinegar, and that vinegar is really bad for the liver. What do you think of that?
I'm on the same page with that as far as vinegars go. I've also learned different things where, coffee, as they say, are benefits, but it's a neurotoxin. So yes, you feel like you get good bowel movements, but you're making the bowels lazy. And so things like apple cider vinegar is the same thing. And pepper, pepper with turmeric. It's very, there's an agitation and irritation that can happen. So you get the results in the way you get it. But I could, if I had a poker, with the child and want the child to get from here to here, if I'm poking this child with the poker, they're going to get from here to there. And you might say, well, the poker's good. The
Yeah.
poker works, right? Shadow.
Ladies, I
Yes,
disagree. I've had great success with apple cider vinegar
some have. Yeah.
and with the Sheila, the thing you just mentioned.
Turpentine?
No, not the turpentine, but so I've had great benefits with apple cider vinegar, baking soda,
Mhm.
and my wife has sort of got some MSM that we had it sitting around the house. I don't
Yeah.
know if you've ever heard of MSM.
Mhm.
And then I've completely stopped coffee 6 weeks ago. Not that I wanted to, but I just couldn't hack it anymore. I've been drinking coffee since I was 4 years old, so that's a long time, right? But I got onto green matcha tea, which is in the bag in the form of a powder. You dip it 4 times, color, and I drink about 6 of those a day. And at first I hated the taste. Now I love it.
Yeah.
And of course, green tea is a highly antioxidant, cleans you out, oxidant
Yeah.
wise.
Yeah.
But
No apple
but the
cider
most
vinegar.
important thing, the most
Yeah.
important thing is
Yeah.
the body needs a lot of oxygen, and the pH level in your
You're cutting out, Eric.
Mhm. I missed quite a bit of what he was saying. I got cut off. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Something about the apple cider vinegar.
Yeah. Let me just